All for One stood in his shadowy lab, feeling his new and improved self. Brrrr, brrrr. Suddenly his phone rang, and he pulled it out too, and saw Garaki was trying to call him. He answered and brought it up to his ear. Did you discover something, Dr.? The heroes are evacuating the area around your current location, Garaki explained. It seems like they may have had a way to track the emerald. That would explain why Cooler was so eager to leave the country. All for One chuckled. Well played. In any case, it'll be rather problematic if that's the case. I don't want to take on the heroes just yet. And especially not on their terms. Bring me to the lab on the edge of the country. We can do something about the tracking from there. Understood. I'll have Johnny bring you there immediately. Garaki said. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX over a console with a bunch of other scientists, with my watching over all of them. Have we tracked the origin? My asked. Yes ma'am. Underneath Jaka Hospital. Another one reported. Then activate the anti-warp generator immediately. My ordered. And inform Sori and Protoman. Seems like we have a lead. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX mouth. And then it suddenly stopped. All for One spat out the liquid that was in his mouth already, and quickly put together what just happened. Seems like they've already used their anti-warp technology. Seems so. Hirojiri also attempts to warp to your location to inform you of the evacuation, but he couldn't use his quirk. Garaki reported. Which means we're all sitting ducks. All for One side. I suppose that's what we get for relying on warp quirks this much. Now we have little choice but to act. Send out what Nomi you have available to attack the public and slow their evacuations. And try to send some scouts to figure out what's happening. I'd like to know what Midori is planning. And then everything went white. Crack 'em. The Gammas both looked down at the giant mushroom cloud they created after blasting the building All for One had been located in. You think he's dead? Gamma 2 asked. Why do you keep asking that when we have scanners? Gamma 1 said as he scanned the inside of the cloud. And even without them, I think you already know the answer to that. The cloud dispersed, revealing a burnt All for One that was mostly unharmed. Standing in the massive burnt crater that was once his base, rather casually. The man was now fully healed, with his face, eyes, and hair returned. I expected more. All for One said, as his regeneration quirks healed him instantly. Well, that did less than I hoped. Gamma 2 sighed. All Might, you're up. All for One sensed something coming at him with one of his quirks, and he looked up to see All Might barreling down at him from above, ready to stomp down on him at max force. Slam! All Might landed feet first on All for One's force field, creating a giant explosion of wind and dust, and leaving a crack in the force field. All Might. Somehow I knew you'd come. All for One said, looking up at his arch-nemesis with a smile. Looks like that girl helped you out as well. You'll pay for everything. All for One. All Might shouted as he cocked back his fist to punch the force field. All for One's sleeve puffed up, as he got ready to unleash a powerful wind explosion. All Might saw this, and jumped back. Just in time as an explosion of wind erupted from All for One. I just barely dodged that. All Might thought as he landed. And that power. He must be using the emerald. But where is it? All Might. Gamma 1 called out. I'm detecting the Chaos Emerald from inside of All for One. What? All Might gasped. Indeed. I took the liberty of putting the emerald somewhere more difficult to remove. All for One pointed to his heart. Right here. I'm not surprised you had room. All Might shouted. Guess I'll just have to tear it out. All Might rushed forward and cocked his fist back. Detriot smash. He launched his fist at All for One, only for All for One to catch it, with seemingly little effort. All Might's eyes widened. What? The villain chuckled. Such a wonderful thing that emerald. Let me show you its power, firsthand. Pew! Pew! All for One received 2 shots in the back of his force field from both Gammas, who continued blasting away at it, creating very small cracks. Damn it! Our attacks aren't even touching him. Gamma 1 growled. You two would have been a problem for me before. All for One said as he turned his attention to the Gammas, pushing All Might back so he could do so. But now, you're nothing but insects. All for One brought his arm up, and his sleeve puffed up. Both Gammas flew away, but the tendrils chased them down relentlessly and started to catch up with them. Pew! 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 The Gammas blasted the tendrils, destroying them, but they quickly regenerated the damage and continued their pursuit. Little help here, All Might. Gamma 2 cried as he continued shooting the tendrils. I'm trying. All Might shouted as he kept rapidly punching the barrier around All for One, but each time he shattered it, the villain would simply put it back up. Then, a portal suddenly opened, right in front of All for One's face. Crack-'em! An exploding sword was sent right in All for One's face and sent All Might flying back from the sheer force of it. All Might flipped mid-air and landed on his feet. Thank you, Ms. Bura. But still, I need to pull my own weight. I have no choice. Hopefully, my body can take it. Then he pulled out something Izuku had given him before the battle started. A might fruit. As the smoke around All for One dispersed, and he regenerated any damage done to him, All Might started eating the fruit. Now why is Ms. Bura still able to open portals? All for One mused. Could it be that she has something that nullifies the effects of whatever ANIT warping device Midoriya is using? I'll have to investigate that later. And All Might, what's that you're snacking on there? All Might took the last bite of the apple, and immediately he felt his body fill with power. The remnants of One for All coursed through his strengthened body easier than before, significantly increasing his power. Rah! Texas! The hero rushed forward at All for One, at speeds faster than All for One was ready for, and thrust his fist forward. All for One put up his force field, and All Might's fist crashed through it and slammed right into the villain's face. Smash! The long-lived villain skidded back a few feet, and a tiny bit of blood came out of his mouth. All for One hummed, as he wiped the blood off his mouth. Well, you've gone from insignificant to slight annoyance. Congratulations. Caracom. Then All for One blasted All Might, with a quick charge wind blast, and sent him flying away. Ag! All Might screamed out in pain, as his skin was cut and torn by the wind pressure, and his bones shook and threatened to crack. All Might was sent flying away, but before he could get too far, the Gammas grabbed him. Even with the Might Fruit. Damn it, that bastard is too strong. Gamma 2 said. Fortunately we don't have to beat him. Just keep him in place. Gamma 1 said as they lowered All Might to the ground. I'll switch to support mode. You two keep on the offensive. Understood. All Might grunted in pain as the strain from taking that last attack took its toll. Looks like even with all the Midoriya Foundation's help, you're just not what you used to be. All for One smirked as he aimed his arm at the trio. And then a dozen swords hammered into All for One from above, bursting into a powerful explosion that shook the earth. Kaboom! 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 The Gammas had to take All Might further back, to avoid the blast of the explosion, the radius of which only kept expanding. Gamma 1 took this as an opportunity to open up his blaster, removing the fractal and replacing it with a new one. Then he aimed at All Might and blasted him with an energy shot. All Might was covered with a glow for a second, as his wounds started to heal and the pain faded. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Gamma 1 said. All for One emerged from the fire and smoke of the continued explosion, casually walking towards them as any wounds he suffered quickly healed. We still have a lot of work to do. Gamma 1 finished, as he jumped behind All Might, while the number 1 hero and Gamma 2 got ready to continue the fight. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX explosions and the sounds of the fight happening miles away. But Kurogiri ran towards them. He didn't have a choice. It was in his programming. He had to assist his master. Slam! Gah! Kurogiri shouted out in pain, as something slammed into his back from behind, pinning him down. So you're the warper that's been causing so much trouble, Gran Torino said as he pinned Kurogiri to the ground. Well, that's one less issue to deal with. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX civilians, from his lab hidden under his hospital, while petting the abomination known as Johnny in his lab. Or rather, he watched as Hawks's feathers defeated dozens of his Nomas in seconds, and got civilians out just as fast. Hawks's power has increased quite a bit, Garaki noted. He must be using a Chaos Emerald. That makes things far more difficult. If only my precious high-ends were anywhere close to completion. Alas there is actually one ready. How could I forget? The girl. A bit sooner than I'd like, but it looks like I'll have to release her and dash. Scum. Suddenly the area behind him erupted with light. What? Garaki quickly spun around in his chair and saw Protoman land on the floor behind him. Midori is Andrea. How? How could you have found me? I'm afraid that blocking warping isn't the only thing we can do, Protoman explained. We can also track it. The android then aimed his cannon at Garaki. Now tell me where the girl is. Mr. Midoriya isn't in a good mood, but he's still willing to let you keep your life if you cooperate. BRRRRRR. 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 Red lights and alarms blared in the lab as an intruder was detected. Suddenly, Protoman heard something quickly approaching him from behind, and turned around, blasting a tentacle from an attacking Nomu that was approaching him. Rah! The tentacle Nomu roared, before Protoman blasted its head off, killing it. But it was far from the only one, a whole horde of Nomus were rushing towards him, with murderous intent. TCH. Protoman pulled out his shield and got ready for a fight. Meanwhile, Garaki quickly started working on his console, and as he did so, he got a notification, showing that Sori had entered his hospital, and it didn't take a genius to figure out what she was here for. Oh god, I'm trapped. I have to release the girl now. It's my only chance. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX kept absorbing negative energy. Much of the chaos, confusion, fear, and anger, coming from an entire city being forced to evacuate, as a giant battle was waged in the heart of their city, was pouring into them. And the balls started to shake.